Hi, I'm Amy.
And hi, this is Audrea.
And this is The Right Crowd. So grab a cup of coffee.
Ooh, that was a pretty one. Or a cup
Thank
of
you.
tea.
Maybe a little something on the rocks, and let's get started. Since you brought it up, my mother brought this back from Haiti, I think. Yep, when she was a missionary there, she brought back 2 cups. One is purple and teal, and one is orange and green. This one's supposed to be my husband's because purple is his favorite color, but I use it all the time. See?
It looks like, oh, I love those colors. It looks like from here, it looks almost like it matches this. A really dark, like red plus the teal here. Yeah. That's interesting.
So anyway, it's handmade by women in Haiti.
That's cool. I was just thinking that yours, for those of you who are playing along at home, you'll notice that Amy's cup changes every week we come together. She has fun mugs. My cup is almost always the same because I have to always remember to say nope to things because I take on too much. Sometimes I'll have my thermal, but otherwise pretty much always the same. I'm good with that.
And Amy has a cup problem, which is why Amy has a different cup every week.
No judgment. If I had space, I would have all the cups because I love fun coffee cups.
Yeah. Well, it'll be a long time before we get to the end of all the mugs that I have. Long time.
Fun. Something to look forward to.
Okay. Week 2. How did week 2 go for you this week?
This week. Week 2 of Book in a Month.
We are both on a little bit of sleep, just so everybody knows. So if we're a little on the wonky side today.
Wonkier. Make that point. Make that distinction. Wonkier. Yes.
Yes, we're on little to no sleep. So we're in week 2, Book in a Month. Take it away, Audrea.
So as you know, there are 4 weeks in the Book of the Month system. We're on, and we're on week 2. And y'all, week 2 is something else. I'm going to tell you. By the end of week 2, you should be 50% done with whatever work you're working on for the book. Yay. So all the fanfare, because that's monumental. And in here, Dr. Schmidt.
A lot of brainstorming in week 2. A lot of brainstorming.
Super useful stuff. If you were doing a revision or rewrite of something, well, the whole book is going to be useful for that. But week 2 gets you to do some really deep thinking. So I really enjoyed week 2. One thing we did not mention that just for you guys, so that it doesn't go unspoken completely, there is some woo-woo stuff in here. Not that much because this is a doctor, but every week there is a mantra, and the week 2 mantra is, I love this story. And every week there's a writing meditation. And for those of us like me who needs to de-stress a little bit, I always look at the meditations and mean to do them. But I do read over the meditations because they are very good info. And I actually went through this one and did the whole writing meditation. So that's my overly brief summary of week 2. What about you? You know what? People have told me that when I'm going on no sleep or I'm super sleepy, it's almost as if I've been imbibing the alcoholic beverages. My speech gets a little bit sloppier. I get a little loosier. But anyway, week 2, over to you, Amy.
And I can't keep a straight face and I'm really tired. So yeah. I, on the other hand, am very much not into all the woo-woo. I fully believe in positive affirmations. And, I can do this. Like she says here, I love this story. And I think some people need that more than others. I think some people like it. I think some people are like, you can take that and file it, and that's whatever works for you. So for me, what I found interesting is the one for this week says to close your eyes and center yourself with several deep breaths and blah, 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 right? So what I realized as I was reading that is that anytime I sit down to do something like a project, I always do just kind of sit and take a couple of deep breaths and just like, all right, now I can move on to the next thing. So I do a little woo-woo without it being woo-woo. So whatever works for you, and you don't have to do any of it.
Yep.
I mean, everybody's different. So you can do, take or leave however you want. I do like this because she points out at the beginning of week 2 that as you're getting into the habit of writing, which is what the purpose of this book I think really is to get you into the habit of writing, is that the more you do it, the easier it's going to get. Not the writing necessarily, but the taking time to write. It's kind of like when you're trying to get in the habit of, I don't like the word try, when your intention is to drink more water, right? So you had 4 bottles of water yesterday, you had 4 bottles of water the day before. Today, you stop at 3. Well, no, I've had 4 the last 2 days. I got to get that last one in. So I think it's great that she points out that it's not necessarily the quantity of what you do. It's getting into the habit. And there's lots of different studies on how many days it takes and how much time it takes to get into a habit. There's a book that I especially like called The One Thing.
Oh yeah.
And The One Thing says that it takes 66 consecutive days to develop a habit until you're doing it without thinking about it. And it's consecutive because if your brain is like my brain, I skip a day and the next thing I know, I've skipped 2 weeks. And then I'm like, wait, wasn't I doing? Mm-hmm. So it's 66 consecutive days and it's one habit at a time. So if you're trying to build 5 different things, your brain's going to go, and it's not going to want to do any of it, right? So pick this as your one thing for right now. And even if it's just 10 or 15 minutes, be consistent. And the more consistent you are, the easier it'll get to sit down and write, even if it's just for 10 or 15 minutes. So I like that she points that out at the beginning of this.
Yeah, you're building a habit that you can continue to build, you can use throughout your life, your writing life. And yeah. It's great to start doing that with this book and in community if you have that opportunity. But you're here with us on YouTube doing the Craft Book Club. So we're anything. One of the other things, and as you guys know, if this is not your first rodeo or first video with Amy and I, we don't go line by line, exercise by exercise, because we want you. If we're reviewing a book, we want you to get the book because it's a good book and it's useful. But so we're going to just do the highlights. But in that first part, or part 1 of Act 2, in the traditional story structure that she goes through, she talks about intensifying the problem. And by the time you're in Act 2 of your work in progress, that's where it started to become overwhelming to you. And she mentions that in the book. You're starting to think, oh, I don't know if I can go on. And you can go on.
We all have a little Scarlet in us.
Yeah. But I really liked how she talked about intensifying the problem, intensify the problem. And she broke it down into barriers, complications, situations, and also temporary triumph. And I thought some of that was real easy for me to say. Revolutionary. That was mind-blowing.
Revolutionary?
Revelatory. That's it.
Revelatory. Okay.
Revelatory. Even though some of these things, if you do read a lot of craft books like Amy and I, some of these things, as we've said in other videos, repeat. But the way different authors, their take on them can sometimes open up a concept for you. And I really did like her really succinct way to break down or intensify a problem.
Right. And I think something I want to point out is not everybody's going to follow this either.
Mhm.
So like there will be people out there who poo-poo that act structure, who poo-poo following a form, who say, do this, this, and this first, and then you go back and do this, this, and this. So there's not just one, like with everything, there's not just one way to do it. So as we go through books, we may come across a book that says, no, don't do it that way, because that way is not the right way to do it. And that's okay. We just want to bring you the information and let you what's the word I'm looking for?
Disassemble? Dissemble.
No.
Disseminate. No, I got it.
Disseminate. No, is that not?
I don't think that's the word. That's a good
Okay,
word.
let me rephrase. I feel like I was on Star Trek there for a second. Pick and choose what works for you.
Yes.
And it may be a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and you put it together and you make a cake. But your cake might be different from somebody else's cake, and that's okay. We want all the cakes. Like, we're not picky. So get the one that works best for you. And, so that's the whole point of this, is to bring you different craft books that some of them will be the same and some of them will be different, and that's okay. But this one, I like that she does point out that you're going to get them there. Now you got to make it worse. Or you got to make them think they solved it, but they really did it. Or they solved it, but here's another problem that makes it so they did it. Yes. Right? So it changes it all up for you.
That temporary triumph, that's what she calls it. That, oops.
Yeah.
Joking. Just kidding. You thought you won, but not so much. Psych. That's one that I've struggled with in other books or models, because it's like, I just felt like I don't get it. I don't get the purpose of that. Why don't we just have them work through the issue and get to solve the problem like you want to do in life? But just like in life, you have setbacks, and the way she explains that temporary triumph brought it home to me a little bit better. And I like what you said too, Amy, about how you take what you want from each of these writing books or craft books. If there was just one do it that way and only that way that worked for everybody, there wouldn't be this many books on my shelf.
We're not going to talk about that.
All right. So in week 2, you are going through days 8 through 14. And there was one other really good, not one other, there are many good concepts, but one of the other ones that I want to talk about was the stay solution oriented. And that's where she talks about not losing your steam as you're going through your work in progress. And she comes up with some creative ways to work on that. One of them is to learn to write anywhere. I think that's a really good thing to try out. Many people are only going to want to write in their special writing place. I have a studio. I'm lucky enough, well, it's our guest room, but I call it my studio. But because I can't always control my day. So learning to write anywhere is a good thing to try out. So I am practicing, actively trying to master dictation, so that, and I've used that when I was on lunch break at work, or waiting for the doctor, and at the doctor's office, I will write part of a scene or some things like that. So that's a great technique that she brought up. And one of the other really nice ones I liked was Think Big. And in here she says, this is about the subplots, because I was a little anxious when she said to leave the subplots by the wayside and just write the main storyline, because you only have 30 days. But in here she talks about how a subplot is basically a story or a sort of mini story within a story. And here in this Act 2 in week 2, you can start to work out some of those. And I really like the concept of every little subplot has a beginning, middle, and end. And she gives you a little place to work on that. And you can see my highlights. I highlighted this section quite a bit.
One of the things I like is that she wants you to think of little ways to reward yourself for staying on track. Mm-hmm. And so no matter what that is for you, whether it's a Snickers bar or you get to go get a new journal, or maybe you get to have some quiet mommy time in the pantry all by yourself, like whatever is, because that lady who has the triplets, I think she's got triplets, and the only way she could get away from her kids was to go hide in the pantry. So she was eating Twizzlers in the pantry by herself, and her kids were like reaching their hand under the door. You haven't seen that video?
No, I have not.
It's hilarious, but that's how she gets quiet time. She goes in the pantry, and that's like her reward. So whatever works for you, find something. And whether you want to say 2 weeks in, or when I finish, or whatever, find something that's going to motivate you to get to the end.
Yeah.
And again, that's going to be different for everybody. And what day is it? There's a day that she actually has us. She says, okay, now it's time to talk about the subplots. Do you remember what day that is?
I believe that, oh, nope. Is that date? Nope, that's not. I don't remember.
I don't remember. I thought I underlined it, but I don't see it.
Here it is, day 13. I highlighted a lot because I didn't want to highlight every line, so I did just a bracket, exclamation points. Day 13.
You mean the bracket like that?
Misters from another mister.
Yeah, so she actually has you on one of these days go back and work your subplots. Mm-hmm. So it's not that she doesn't want them in there. She explains that when she said don't do it, it was because you needed to get as many words on the paper, and subplots make you like think that way.
Yeah. Instead
of just going this way. So I like that she breaks it down to, okay, now that we've got the base, let's start filling in all the holes. I like that she does that.
Yes. And yeah, I highlighted a lot on day 12 and day 13. But yeah, the subplot part, I really like that. And when we're getting towards, let me go back just a little bit. There was one other thing I wanted to bring up before we get there. When she talks about identifying your character motivation. Oh my God.
That's what I was just about to point out.
You think we planned this?
But we don't. We legit are like, okay, you ready? Yep. Okay, let's talk. Like we don't plan this.
Think how amazing we'd be if we planned this.
We would totally screw it up.
Yeah, probably. All right, go.
No, you were saying character motivations.
Oh, well, I really liked how she broke down the character motivation. She gave some great examples. And this is where my stories start to fall down. And I have a note that I wrote that I put in here because after I read this, I wrote, sometimes I feel like Maxa, that's my character's name, is just floating through the story with, and she's not driven by motivation as much. And so that is one of the things that I need to work on. And I really like what she wrote about, and this is what I highlighted, one of the things I highlighted. Remember that motivations tend to evolve as circumstances change. And I think that's one of the things that has hung me up on motivation before, is that thinking it's the same motivation throughout the book. And it's not, because things change or more information is revealed, and additional conflicts arise, or situations are handled or solved. So yeah, what were you going to say about this part?
I like how she gives you a chart and breaks it down to be able to figure it all out. And something off of what you just said is that the motivation is going to change, and there could be like a solid motivation in the background from start to finish. It has all of these like bumps. I mean, think of like a detective story, and his main goal is to find this one murderer.
Yes.
However, all these things happen along the way that keep him going towards that end goal. Mm-hmm. So you could have a character like that has one in the background with all these little things that happen. It doesn't have to be, but it could be. It's what she's saying is that it shouldn't be a static one thing all the way through, because you want your readers to have something to like, Oh,
Yeah.
oh, like you want them to like stay with the character and stay with the story and not get bored and be like, is she ever going to do that? Because she's been looking for it for 350 pages. Is she gonna get there? Because I'm there. You know what I mean? So you want to keep your readers. If it would bore you to read it, it's gonna bore your readers.
And
So you need to make sure that it's entertaining.
Right. And if it bores you to write it, yeah, that's something that it's most likely going to bore your readers.
I mean, unless you're writing a computer programming book, which I mean, if you're writing it, it probably excites you. That's why you're writing it. On day 10, she talks about how is that what you were going to say?
Yeah.
She talks about how there should be 3 big events.
Oh, yeah.
And that if your story doesn't have them, you need to go back. Now, I don't know how I feel about that. This might be one of those things that I'm like, maybe I'll leave this piece out of my cake. I don't know. I need to like do a little more thinking on that. But she did say that there are opportunities to reveal your character and what's going on with your character. So I like that. I just don't know how I feel about there's got to be 3. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yes, if it has to be that number, it can be 3 or more, is what she said,
right.
At minimum of 3. And yeah, that one was a bit hard to take because I had to think about my story and what are my 3 big events. And that's one of the exercises she has you go through as you read the book or in that section. And I was hard pressed to come up with 3 that weren't obvious. I'm writing a murder mystery. So, I mean, it's the death of the guy, and then the last one is the finding of the murderer, but what's the other one? So I did finally, after working through it and reading more through this that section, I did come up with 4. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. One of the other things that is in that section or that day is, and we're bouncing around on days here. I'm talking about day 10 is the developing a plot snapshot. And I loved the grid that she made up for you. This is one of the ones where I was writing in the grid with my handy dandy erasable pen, which is the only way. But then I got frustrated because the boxes are too small and my writing is so big. So I did start using a notebook. Well, I always use a notebook. Here's a tip for you guys, pro tip. Whenever I'm taking a writing class or reading a craft book like this, I always use a notebook and I write what book it is that I'm working on and what exercises and so forth. And then I will have a corresponding digital notebook. I use Evernote for that, a digital notebook where I'm writing exercise answers and things like that. But so yeah, I really like that, and the insert cliffhangers.
I like how in the cliffhanger part, she says, there has to be a question in the reader's mind about what will happen next. And then on the next page, she says, the goal here is to leave readers wondering about what could possibly happen so that they won't be able to put your book down.
Yeah.
Is that, that part. You don't want to like immediately give them the satisfaction of knowing what's going on. You want them to be like, okay, wait, what happens next? And they're going to keep reading. So yeah, I like that.
Yeah, that was excellent way to think about what you can do at the end of a scene or at the end of a chapter, or what you should be doing to keep them going. And it's a great way to reread your book if you're doing a revision with this instead of a new work in progress. And speaking of another great thing she has, on day 13, she talks about each scene in your book should have a purpose in the story. So the reason I double highlighted that part about every scene in your book has to have a story is because I find, because I'm a pantser, a lot of the time I will just write things out, things that just occur to me. I'm just writing it out, especially during NaNoWriMo. Your goal is to get the words on the page up to 50,000 or what. So you have to keep everything, just keep going. And I can't remember who said it. I was going to look it up. We'll put that on our webpage or on our Instagram. The first draft of a story is you telling the story to yourself. And so as a pantser, when I tell the story to myself, I find when I go back through the story, I have lots of scenes that don't have a purpose. So it's called Killing Your Darlings. And I have to either give those scenes a purpose or make them pull their weight in the book, basically. Another author said that, or I have to cut them. And so I really like the reminder that this section is. And I also, once again, like and that's what I'm doing for my work in progress. I'm going through and doing the little, I did this in an Excel spreadsheet. And the scene, it has a scene summary, scene connector, and scene summary, but I add, the purpose of that scene. I added another column in mine, but you were going to say, Amy?
The thing I like about this is that she points out that, yes?
I think if I were watching this back, we'd go from us talking to now you look completely different. So I think we probably have to talk about that real quick.
Oh, okay. So just to point out, I look a little different in the video. I've been having technical difficulties. I got a new laptop and it doesn't have a connection for Ethernet. So I have a connector that connects it. And I live in a house built in 1928 with plaster walls. So the Wi-Fi sucks.
Yep.
So occasionally I have issues. So I am on my phone now, and that's why it looks maybe a little different. Okay. What I was going to say is the thing I like about this chart and what she says in this part is that, oh, that rhymed, is that it's your scenes should connect. So scene 1 should lead to scene 2, should lead to scene 3. Now, what I could say is that depending on your point of view, is that 1 may lead to 3 and 2 may lead to 4, but they should connect in some way. And I can tell you as a reader and as someone who when I write, as I'm writing it, I'm visually seeing my story as if I'm watching it on TV. That's how I write.
Yeah.
So when I'm watching a show or I'm reading a book or whatever, and there's a scene where I'm going, what was the point of that? Like, those are the ones that you don't want in your book. Like, you don't want people at the end of the book going, but what happened with, and who was that guy that they brought in for half a page? Like, he came out of nowhere and then he just stayed there, right? So this is your opportunity to go back and make sure all of your pieces fit, even if it's leapfrogged, as long as they connect and there's a point to what you've put in there. If you have too many pointless points, you'll lose readers.
Yes.
You'll lose readers.
Exactly so. So we come to one of the best parts of the book of almost any craft book for me, and of this week and each of the weeks, is the section where she gives you a checklist. And I'm not sure if you do you have the same bracket on like week or day 14?
Let me see.
But it is
sort of. I have a little bracket.
Ah, yes.
I have a little bracket.
This is so day 14 is about finding and filling story holes, character holes, motivation holes, plot holes, research hole checklist, believability. That's one that keeps hammering me on my work in progress. The other one that I'm working on is there's one particular concept or what is it? It's a conceit that I have in the book. And no matter how many times I've reworked it, every time people read it, every time I hand it to a beta, or in my case, alpha reader, they go, that's funny, but I don't understand why they wouldn't have talked about, that doesn't make sense. But okay. I'm like, well, I don't want you to go, okay. Like, it doesn't make sense. It's not believable. So the checklists in here are super handy. So when you get this book, when you order this book using our link down below, or buy it at your local bookstore or wherever you get it, that's going to be something that you're going to highlight and go back to whether you're writing a new book or whether you're working on or revising something.
I think I think the last thing I want to point out is the checklist for research. If you're writing about a fictitious place, it doesn't matter, right? You can call the streets and the stores and the people and the things, whatever you want to call them, which is why I like writing sci-fi, because there's no fact checking in sci-fi. It's my brain making up all the things in my story.
Yes.
However,
Yep.
if you're writing about New York or Casper, Wyoming, and you start naming stores or streets that don't exist in those places, your readers are going to let you know.
Oh, yeah.
So make sure if you're using a real place, you have done your research and you know the names of the streets or the particular area that you're working in. I used to live in Georgetown, and I used to love reading Alex Cross books because he's in DC, and I'm like, oh, I know where that street is, or I know where the coffee shop is, because he did his research and he knew the names of places. So make sure that's a great way to get people to not read your stuff, is not being factual when you're dealing with a real city.
Yeah. I'll
So-
add one other thing on that research checklist. I write, for the most part, mysteries. Cozy mysteries are my fave, and my cozy mysteries are my jam. And to read and to write. And one of the things that you have to remember, even when you are writing fiction set in the real world, whether it's a real town or a town you made up that exists or that in the real world in today, like in my case, I made up a town because I wanted to have things in that town that I knew did not exist in the town that is its sister city or the town it was based on. And so I also did not want people coming to me or emailing me, that store shut down in 1979. I don't know what you're talking about. It doesn't exist in 2000, blah, blah, blah. So you really should, world building, they think world building, authors talk about world building in fantasy and sci-fi, that all your magic systems, they have to, you make them up, but you have to be consistent. So you made it up, write it down in a Bible, or they call them series Bibles or fiction Bibles, so that when you are writing away you're on page 187 and you're about to say something about a street or a store or magic or whatever it is, that you're using the same rules that you made up in the beginning of the book so that you're consistent throughout.
Or like if you're writing a series and you're on book 4 and you bring something up that was first mentioned in book 1, it better match up.
Yep.
Because they will tell you. And some of them not so nicely. So get ready.
Be nice, y'all. Be
Get
nice.
ready. Yeah. So anything else you want to bring up? Except how big my face is on my phone?
It's not that, it's lovely. Your face is lovely. Just one last thing, like and subscribe.
Yes, and share. And I'm officially out of coffee. So
So it must be over.
we're
Bye,
done.
everybody.
Bye.